So there's an agnostic and Gnostic definition. Most atheists, and just using the term in an abbreviation, are agnostic atheists. So their belief is, hey, I don't think there's a God. But they're not claiming to say, I know there's no God, the way I can say, I know I have a phone in my hand. They're not making that claim. It's very few people who are making that claim. By and large, when we talk about atheists, it's really synonymous with agnostic atheists, who are basically not making a claim themselves. They are saying to the religious, you who are asserting that there is a deity, that there's a creator, we're saying we don't buy that claim because there's not enough evidence to warrant buying that claim. Now, I myself I label myself an agnostic deist. I'm very open to the possibility of creative forces. I just don't think they interact with us. And when it comes to the religious and atheists, most atheists today, I would gander that I've talked to when I interact, it's not because they're saying there is no God. And even though they might say, I don't see the evidence for it, most people who take the atheist position are actually saying, hey, you theists, whether you're Christian or Muslim and are believers, we don't see good evidence for your scripture. We believe it's painting the picture of a deity, and the scripture doesn't live up to that deity. It is not self-consistent, and that is why they're rejecting religion. And oftentimes we see the word atheism and we think, oh, these people are making a positive claim that no God exists and it's not, provable, and they've never been able to prove it. I think we're going down a red herring if we take that approach. As for the definition of science that I used in my slides, I just took that from the Oxford American English Dictionary. But I think in this discussion, one of the things I see all too often is we talk about science and what we can prove, and hey, there's a phone in front of me, and whenever we try in these discussions, I see an argument made or apologetics for the religious perspective of, maybe ants and humans can talk to each other, maybe Jesus did raise the dead to life. We take these really exceptional events and we try to denigrate or discount our own basic senses. Yes, Newtonian physics has been superseded when we think of Einstein and quantum mechanics going at a whole other level. But the indeterminacy of things going on at the quantum level does not change the fact that when I drop this phone at a macro level, it's going to hit the table. Things at this scale, we understand. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we use our own limited senses or the fact that they're fallible to then start making excuses for very obvious basic things in order to provide an out for religion.
Thank you. We have 3 minutes left. I know that you raised your hand. Imam, please.
I have just a few comments. I think we have also left out the religious atheists. A lot of churches today say that God is so unfathomable. It's actually arrogant on our part to say that, we can describe him adequately, and so they embrace what we call religious atheism. But the problem is always one of bias, and let us say all of us have maybe minimum 179 biases. And maybe a good definition of good science is try to reduce all those biases. Because even those who speak about confirmation bias, we may have our own confirmation bias. Richard Dawkins, for instance, very militant against religions, but he says that he loves the sound of church bells more than the adhan. So he really comes from his Christian cultural background, and he still has that particular bias that is out there. I'm arguing with a lot of Muslims who say there's no place for secularism, and I say if secularism is there to protect the rights of minorities, there's definitely a place for that type of secularism. So I don't want, or whether we call it secularity or what secularism, but my definition of God is infinite possibility. And if science is adding 5 million more possibilities to what I understood before. I said, wow, so science is really helping me in affirming that type of, that God is infinite possibility. As for this, I'm not saying that we should discountenance or just throw out everything that science comes up with, like in the treatment of cancer or whatever. But if you do come up with an idea, how are you going to implement that idea? Should those bombs be thrown? Should nuclear bombs be used on other vulnerable nations? Yes, use the positive things that come from our experiments, but do not take it further. I just have one last example, and I think when Professor Jaber was speaking about out-of-the-box thinking, there's a little story about 15 hungry lions that got their prey. And after getting their prey, they start to just participate in their victory of, eating the kudu. There are 3 old and elderly hunters of the Maasai tribe, and they then decide to fool the lions. They go in there just armed with their sticks, chase the lions away in enough time so that they can take one large piece of the thigh of the kudu, walk away with it, and the hungry lions then come back. So I think we need to make place for those type of things that we think are impossible also, and yet it becomes inevitable when people just put their experience to work.
Thank you to our panelists. This is the end of the panel discussion. Yes, lunchtime? Yeah. I'm sure people are hungry. Thank you all.
Let's eat.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you for our panelists. It's lunchtime now. We have half an hour, but the good news is food will be out for the rest of the day. So feel free to nibble around the rest of the day until we're done from it. I just want to announce that all the speakers in Muslimish, all the panelists have volunteered their time. Nobody has been really paid even an honorarium for their talk, so we thank you very much for your time. And Muslimish is a non-profit 501c3 organization. It basically funds itself through the members' donations mostly. Thank you. Enjoy lunch.